Most buyers never tell you where you lost them. They sit through your demo, read your proposal, take your follow-up call, and then they go quiet. And somewhere in your sales process, that deal gets marked as lost to a competitor or no decision. But the truth is usually simpler, and it's harder to hear. The process broke down somewhere, and nobody on your team saw it coming, because your buyers have a seat at every meeting you will never be invited to. The outside seat sits in that seat. I'm Mike Tumalty, founder of Inside Now, where we go through your commercial funnel as a real buyer and tell you exactly what we find. I'm also the host of the Outside Seat podcast, where I bring that conversation to the people who can actually do something about it. Every week, 2 strands. The GTM leaders talking strategy, and then the unsung heroes talking reality. Brought to you by Flourish, the GTM talent partner that connects hiring, development, and performance in sales, in life. Now to today's show. Welcome to today's episode of The Outside Seat. I'm delighted to have Jim with us today. Jim is a phenomenal partnerships leader. I'll let him introduce himself in a moment, but this is part of our Unsung Heroes section, and we're really looking forward to today's conversation. Jim, why don't you give the 30-second elevator pitch around who you are and what you do?
Sounds good, Mike, and thanks for having me today. Jim Misuraca, been in the partnerships world for 20 years or so, working with large Fortune 500 companies all the way down to very small 10, 20 person startups. My main focus historically has been in the MarTech, data, ad tech partnership space, based in Phoenix, Arizona.
Awesome. And I see from your bio, you've won Adobe Partner of the Year twice. And most people in the partnership role would consider that a career peak, but knowing you how I do, that you're striving for more all of the time. What do you do differently that everyone else in that ecosystem is not doing to be recognized the way that you are?
I think there's a lot that goes into it, both on the go-to-market side and on the product side, as well as, I would say, an executive team sponsorship perspective. A lot of these partner programs are pay to play and or just have a big program fee associated with them. So there needs to be a financial commitment. There also, on, I would say, the product engineering side, needs to be a tech commitment. So especially if you're an ISV partner and you want to build an integration or a series of integrations, you need to fit that within the product roadmap and other product and engineering initiatives that they have going on, and need to do it in a time frame that also works for the partner that you're in their partner program with. We have a great tech team. I have a great tech alliances leader that I partner with here at RainFocus, Marius, who we worked with in the past. And I would say he and his team have done a great job over the last 4 or 5 years of building all the key integrations with respect to Adobe, all the key integrations into the Adobe Experience Cloud. I think one thing where certain partners inadvertently stumble on is they try to be all things to everybody, where we knew we were going to focus on just a couple of verticals, really nail it, really nail the use cases, solve for some very key pain points. And obviously, I think the results speak for themselves. On the go-to-market side, it's just not myself. It's our marketing org, our partner marketing team. It's being able to work, in this case with Adobe, with the Adobe sales team and their partner marketing folks, their sales leaders. We can build the best integrations in the world, have the best story in the world, but if they're not letting us in to help evangelize and enable their sales reps on the Better Together solution, that's another stumbling block that a lot of folks unfortunately run into.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that you mentioned there was around, you talked about marketing a little bit. And from a partnerships perspective, there are different companies have different ways of attacking partnerships, right? So you've got those that it must sit in sales. You've got those that sit in marketing. You've got even those that sit with maybe within the technology side because they're working on the integrations. Do you have any perspective or personal views, opinions on the best place for partnerships? Or is this calling your phrase, what you just said then, is that better together, not just with the partners, but internally as well?
I think it depends on the type of partner that you are. If you're a systems integrator, if you're a services partner, in many cases, it makes more sense to be aligned either in the sales organization under the CRO or something similar, chief customer officer, anything more on the go-to-market side. In the ISV world, if you're a technology partner, some folks are very aligned into the product organization. My particular role right now is what I would call strategic partnerships. It has a corp dev component to it as well, where I can kind of span across. So I've got a couple of key SI partners. I've got a couple of key technology partners for a variety of reasons, more on the corp dev side. I try to manage and maintain as strong of a relationship with as I can.
And partnerships, well, it's consistently one of the most underfunded, misunderstood GTM motions. Why do you think that continually persists today? Because if I look at it from my perspective, I think partnerships are critical for, even if you're just looking at it from brass tacks perspective and the dollars, that level of coverage that you have by initiating a solid ecosystem of partners, the technical expertise, and then from the buyer's perspective, the trust that those buyers have already got with those partners out in the market. Why, therefore, is it still one of the most underfunded areas in a lot of organizations today?
I choose to believe that it's more unfamiliarity with working with a partner org or working with a successful partner org. I think a lot of folks in general that go into sales are very strong personalities. They're outgoing. A lot of times they don't think that they need the help, or they don't want the help, or they think that they can close a deal by themselves. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think there's that viewpoint of, if I don't understand it fully, how can it really help me? I think the other thing that I've seen is they look at, I'll say partnerships in air quotes, they look at it as a problem, not as an initiative. I've seen partner leaders get pulled in to say, fix this problem, sales, pipeline, whatever it may be. And they don't tend to weave that in the day-to-day processes throughout the org, even though partnerships touches everyone: customer success, sales, product, marketing, engineering, and finance. And I would say the unfamiliarity with it, the looking at it as a problem, where it's almost like, okay, I've got a revenue problem, but then 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, if the revenue problem doesn't exist, it's like, well, why do I need partnerships? Or thanks, you fixed the problem. And I think there needs to be a 24/7, 365 commitment to having an indirect channel and weaving that into all your workflows and processes throughout the organization to make it successful.
No, it's a good point, because I think some organizations, a bit like sales enablement, if you like, they see partnerships and enablement as an event rather than a continuous improvement and a continuous motion within that whole buyer's journey, and ensuring that the partnerships are there to support forever green. It's not just a one-time event of we'll hire that partner and it's a tick in the box. We've got 20 partners. Okay, but what are they doing for you? What's the revenue contribution? How are they supporting you with the existing customers? How are they supporting you with other go-to-market motions, whether that's just simple things like sponsoring sales kickoffs or sponsoring events or doing co-funded marketing. There's so much that a partnerships organization can lend itself towards the go-to-market motion and that buyer's journey. And I think you're right. There's a number of friction points. I'll use that word. I know you didn't, but there's some friction points that exist within the, if you like, the direct sales motion, where that friction point might be, it's going to be margin erosion, rather than thinking about actually it's going to be multiple deals, rather than I'd give 20% up on one deal to get 4 more deals where I'm getting 80% of that. That's my mentality. That's how I look at it from a partnerships perspective. You take a deal to a partner, work with them. Yes, you might have some margin erosion to that partner, but they're going to go and find other opportunities because they want to work with you, because they can see, well, I've got a similar customer over here in my install base, which is similar to the one we've just sold there. Let me introduce you here because I think it's going to be beneficial there. Then you get in a new opportunity. And that friction point should exist within any go-to-market from my perspective, but it needs to be a healthy friction point. And sometimes on the direct sales side, people are resistant to partnerships. That's my experience running sales organizations. And is that what you see, or is that a thing of the past? Any views on that?
No, I think we're on the same wavelength there. I was going to say a good partnership, no matter what type of partner that you are, removes friction in the sales cycle, in the renewal cycle. I think the value prop may be a little different. If I'm a services org or a systems integrator, a lot of times I'll say the bigger company that you're typically partnering with, I would say the table stakes expectation is you're starting to bring them leads. You bring them a lead, you ensure that you get the services from that, but you either bring it to the company. Sometimes you can resell the software, to your point, where you're giving up 10, 20 points of margin potentially, but you're making the overall pie bigger. And I think there's a lot of folks that naturally in sales, if I'm in direct sales, it's a win-loss. It's either closed won or it ends up closed loss. And I either get that piece of the pie or I don't. Where I try to reshape their thinking a little bit, where it's like, it's not one pie. It's how can we take this partner to make 2 pies or 3 pies? Because you've got an extension of your sales team that can literally be selling for you while you're sleeping.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So if you look at the type of profile that you're looking to bring into your team and the type of profile that you're hiring for, I mean, what are you actually looking for? What are the signals that tell you in an interview that someone they'll be great at this versus they just interview really well? Because there's such a nuanced approach to dealing with partners. So what's that profile that you look for?
I'm going to give you a very non-traditional answer. I look for 2 main things: the figure it out gene and the ability to get shit done. I don't necessarily rely as much on, hey, can you give me 3 references? Or if I'm at an agency and I need a financial services partner manager focused on the financial services vertical, I see time and time again when I see job recs, must have 8 years of experience in the financial services vertical. If I'm hiring for that position, I don't want to say I could care less. They need to have very relevant experience. They need to have some level of knowledge of the financial services and insurance vertical. But give me somebody who's willing to grind. Give me somebody who's willing to roll their sleeves up. Anyone that is remotely polished, anybody that's been in a difficult partner role and survived or thrived, I think I would take them. And I've hired from all different sorts of areas. I hired somebody from a customer success org that I was convinced was not going to be a good hire, but the partner director on my team made the hire anyway, and he turned out to be one of our best folks. And I would say there's very non-traditional ways to find really good partner people. And I feel like just right now in 2026, there's some really good partner folks that are looking for new opportunities that, because they don't check all the, what I would call traditional boxes, aren't getting a solid look, that are just fantastic A+ partner people.
Yeah, it's a difficult market for a lot of roles right now. In 2026, it is proving difficult out there in the market. If we go back to your figure it out gene specifically, how do you test for that in the interview process? I'm assuming it's not just you've got 1 or 2 trap questions, but how do you actually test for that gene?
I don't use references per se, because a candidate is not going to give you a reference that's not going to give them a glowing recommendation.
Yeah, of course.
I feel like I've got the luxury of having been in the partnership space long enough where either through LinkedIn or my personal network, I'll know somebody who knows them that can give me, I would say, an honest thumbs up, thumbs down experience. Or it could be somebody that totally making this up, but if I'm hiring somebody that had managed a Snowflake or a Databricks partnership, I know some folks over there that I would call and say, hey, I'm trying to back channel on such and such. They're in an interview process with us. How are they to work with? What was your partner team's experience with them? And try to get that way, to get a very unbiased view. The short answer to your question is, It's very hard to determine if they have that gene just through an interview. But I would say that is probably the single most important factor, in my opinion, on whether someone's going to be successful or not in a partner role.
Now, before we continue, a word from today's sponsor, Flourish. Most businesses don't underperform because they can't hire or don't invest in training. They underperform because the two things never talk to each other. Hiring happens over here, development happens over there, and somewhere in the middle, invariably performance breaks down. Flourish fixes that. They're an award-winning go-to-market talent partner working across early career SDR hiring, senior sales talent, and practical training that drives real, measurable results and not just activity. I've personally worked with their managing director, Sarah Skelton, for almost 20 years, so I know how they operate. They stay invested through the full journey and not just the placement. If you're looking to build a commercial team that actually performs, Flourish is where I would start. Find them at helloflourish.com. In sales, in life. That makes sense. And if we look at the unsung heroes within the GTM, and that's what the theme of today's episode is about, they all have that t-shirt of get shit done. So whether you are in partnerships or you're a BDR or you're in RevOps or you're a sales engineer and somebody's coming to you and saying, we've got this really important customer. They've just said that they've got availability tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and we need to prep a demo. Well, the sales engineer is the one that's going to get shit done. They're the ones that are going to prepare for that so that they can deliver that. Or I need a reference for this particular customer. Let's go and speak to our partnerships team. Do you have somebody that looks like this? And they'll get it done. They'll go and find it. And that's the mentality of those people, in my experience, of the unsung heroes who are always looking to go that extra mile to make the business more successful. So it's a really good trait to have. It's not that easy to find. And that's
Agreed.
But when you find it, boy, it makes a big difference within the organization.
It's gold. It said if you can find a needle in a haystack, you're probably going to be a good partner person.
Yeah. So let's change tact a little bit. And you mentioned a little bit earlier, you used those two letters, two vowels, AI. So how is AI changing the commercial function that you see within partnerships? Because it's affecting lots of different areas, right? Whether it's the BDRs and marketing or sales and research and sales engineers, and how people are operating it's evolving. Let's say it's not changed, it's evolving. But how are you seeing that evolution specifically for the partnerships profession? I'll use that in the air quotes. Does it make the human relation element even more valuable or less valuable today?
Wow, there's a number of ways that I could answer this. I would say, to answer your last question first, the relationship part of partnerships is not ever going to go away because of AI. I think AI enables, much like with a lot of other functions in the enterprise, the ability to get more work done, to review more data, to produce more reports in a much shorter length of time. I don't think that, aside from work efficiency or productivity, that's probably what I'm seeing now from a partner group itself. When I look at the large partner programs that are out there, I think from a hyperscaler or the big AI companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and the like, Microsoft, they're paying much more attention to that. So I think the byproduct or the downstream effect of that is you've got all these companies that maybe were, for lack of a better term, legacy enterprise software that now have to integrate some sort of AI layer into their own platform to get more attention from some of these big partner programs. And that AI layer sometimes can be native. You could pull something in that can will now tell you with much more accuracy and much more quickly what's the next best action in the sales cycle. You've always had those tools out there for years, Gong and the like, that will give you a summary of my sales call, as an example, but it doesn't give you context. Does it have access to your Google Drive? Does it have access to your contacts? if you can get that holistic view, leveraging one or more AI technologies, I think it'll make you much more efficient, effective. We still speculate, I'll say pre-AI, we still speculate on why is stuff caught mid-funnel? Is it real? My sales reps say that it is, but I'm finding that the close rates have decreased over the last year or two considerably. Why is that? I think you can use AI also backwards a little bit in history to help analyze what what your strengths are, where your weaknesses are with respect to sales cycles. I want to win more where I'm already winning more, and I want to triage where maybe the win rates aren't as high. Do I not focus on that area going forward because the win rates are so low? Are there little tweaks that I can make to really increase that win rate? I think there's literally infinite ways that AI can help, but I'm seeing it more just on an efficiency basis. I don't think from a partner team perspective, I don't think there's much more of that right now. I think it'll be coming, but I don't think it's there yet.
Okay. So specifically for the partnerships team, you don't see that material impact. Efficiency makes a whole heap of sense, and a lot of organizations have that as part of the value proposition around AI. But in terms of technologies out there today, are there any technologies that are designed specifically for the partnerships team within an organization that you use today, whether that's AI related or more traditional partnerships? What are those tools that your team are using on a consistent basis?
There's a lot of PRM tools out there that I have used in the past. Having said that though, I think the most valuable tool for any partner person would be Crossbeam. It's basically an account mapping tool where you submit your customer list, your greenfield list, your current sales opportunities by product. You can slice it and dice it as much as you want. You can upload it. You elect to share with partners A, B, and C. You may show them just a company name where there's a match. You may show them the company name, rep email. I use it a lot more for order of magnitude. Like is there, hey, we're thinking about building an integration with XYZ technology. Let's see that customer list to see how much overlap there is. One simple example, but there's literally dozens of examples on how to use it. But that's typically what I use more than any other partner software that's out there.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal tool. I've used it in a couple of companies recently, and I think where it really helps is on that buyer's journey perspective, because what you'll find within an organization, you're trying to sell into an organization, and you mentioned that some opportunities might stick mid-funnel, but if you've engaged with a partner who is actually mapped to that opportunity, and you can see that through Crossbeam, you can get the intelligence from the partner, because this might just be the normal way that business operates, or they've had the heads up that actually there's a problem with this opportunity, but the customer is not saying it because the sales rep in this example has not asked the direct question. So trying to understand the customer more, leveraging your partners to do that is golden. And Crossbeam is it's not a sponsored section for Crossbeam here, but it's a phenomenal tool that I've used, like I said, on a couple of occasions, which has unlocked serious opportunities to get them across the line, or even if it's not to get them across the line, to let you know actually where you stand within that organization. And from a sales perspective, sometimes you don't ask the difficult questions or the direct questions, and the partner can give you the lowdown, if you like, on that particular opportunity you're trying to sell into. So I'm glad you brought it up, because it is a great tool. Awesome. So we've talked about the hiring and the things that you're looking for from a hiring perspective. You're in a not a unique position, but you're in a position where you've managed teams on a global spectrum. So whether it's in the US, EMEA, or APAC, where do you see any differences when it comes to managing partners cross borders? So whether it's in EMEA, we've got lots of different borders, and the same in APAC versus the US. Are there any immediate differences that spring to mind?
I definitely think EMEA versus North America. EMEA is much more localized. I think it is more relational, which is why I feel like partnerships is more natural in EMEA than it is in North America. A lot of times in the US, we're looking for speed and outcomes. We're not, we look at it as transactional versus relational. I know I've said that a few times, but it's how can I get this deal done so I can do the next deal? And it's not about necessarily about trust or reducing risk or building a relationship with the partner. If a partner can help me close a deal, great. And then you're on to the next deal where you may or may not use a partner. I think a lot of sales reps in the US in particular look at it that way. Where in EMEA, there's always local channel partners and SIs and regional consultants that in many cases carry a lot of influence with potential buyers. If your specialty is in a country or two in EMEA, you're probably pretty well entrenched there, especially for, like I said, for the services partners. If they're doing a lot of work, the word of mouth travels, doesn't need to travel very far if you're only in a few countries and you specialize in it, where you quickly become that trusted external third party.
No, very good. And when you're dealing with partnerships cross borders, do you see a difference in the buyer's experience? What I mean by that is how customers engage with partners in those different regions. Is there anything that maybe the audience here is like, you need to be aware of? This is how your partners would operate in this region because the buyers are actually operating differently in that region. Is there any tangible examples there?
I think in general, we know we've seen all the numbers on B2B buying committees, 6, 9, 20 people sometimes on a buying committee. My belief is in the US and North America that you tend to have 2 or 3 stronger voices than the rest, stronger influencers than the rest in the buying cycle, where my experiences in the past in EMEA, it's very much by committee, consensus building, I think much more so. And I think that that affects you in the sales cycle because in the US, I think if you can hone in on who's the influencer, who has the strongest voice, who has the budget, even if there's a dozen other folks, that's where you put a majority of your time. I think in EMEA, my guess is it's more of a cultural thing where there's just a lot more consensus building and there's not that one strong voice. It's the goal that we want by finding the right vendor. And it's not necessarily, in many cases, one person that's going to lead that.
I agree. And if you look at a salesperson going to battle, if you like, I don't usually like using those metaphors of going to battle, going to war, but trying to engage with a customer, let's say, it takes a village. You've got customers who are certainly, they have buying committees, they're multi-threaded on their side. There's lots of steps in the process. Yet a lot of salespeople today will go into an organization, speak to somebody they believe to be the champion, and initiate a sales process against that individual. So that makes a lot of sense. So the way that I look at it is if you've got customers on their side who've got a whole committee of people who are making the purchase. So from the buyer's perspective, it's not a single person decision generally, especially when you're looking at enterprise. Yet from a sales perspective, a lot of salespeople will find their champion within that organization and try and sell single threaded within that individual. So I think that becomes a problem within the sales process. If you don't go in with the support, don't go in support with your sales engineer, don't go in with the support of a BDR who can go and multi-thread whilst you're engaging with your champion and finding other people to engage with. And more critically, if you don't engage with the partner ecosystem who've already established the relationships across that organization, who know where the, if you like, the bodies are buried, or you know where the pressure points are within the organization, how they buy, what they generally look at, what kind of things from a legal's perspective are they going to be pushing back on. It's better to go as a salesperson with multiple arrows within your quiver than going single threaded within an organization. And that's why partnerships, probably more so than any other function, is a real strong advocate and strong supporter within that sales process because they open so many doors that invariably are shut. And all it takes is a little bit of a knock to open that door. And the partners have got the keys to those doors. So it's really important that most salespeople engage with partners, partnerships team, and everybody that's associated to that GTM motion.
Absolutely. Agree.
Let's get onto the rapid round. So this is 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions. At the end of it, if there's something that's super interesting, we might just do a little bit of a deep dive on that. But number 1 was, what's the one tool in your GTM stack? I think we've already got a spoiler for this. What was that one tool in your GTM stack that you cannot live without?
Most definitely Crossbeam.
Awesome. The biggest GTM myth that you would like to kill off today?
I think you mentioned it a few minutes ago, just the fact of going it alone versus using all the tools in your toolbox to get a deal done. And I think partnerships is a Swiss Army knife, can be used a number of different ways to help that go-to-market motion.
I love the analogy. Cross borders. The metric that you look at first thing on the Monday morning. So whether you're sat on the edge of your bed and you open your phone, or the first thing when you've had your coffee, you open your laptop, what's that first metric that you look at first thing on a Monday?
My indirect, my partner pipeline report. What's closed, what's progressed. That's just my snapshot before I start my day.
Very good. As you can see, I've got my sales books, my business books. What's that one business book that you go back to time and time again? So for me, I've got the Start With Why. I've given that book away 100 plus times to different salespeople during my career. But what's that one book that you go back to time and time again?
I tend to go back when I feel stuck, and that's stuck in any way. Stuck on, how am I going to get this partner program off the ground? Stuck is, hey, it's gotten stale. What can I do to reinvigorate a particular partnership that may be several years old? There's a book out there called 7 Powers, and it's I forget the author, but it's based on Michael Porter's 5 Forces. They've kind of turned it into 7 powers around scale economies, network economies, switching costs, branding. Like, what's the aha? What can you pull out of? I look at it from a partnership perspective, but what can you pull out of it from partnerships that will give you an edge, will give you the why should we do this answer?
Awesome. I'll have to add that one to the list of books. And final question, who is the most underrated person in your professional network that more people should know about?
I feel like if I named one, there would be several others that would be upset. I don't talk to him very often, but there's a guy in the industry, Kyle Schroeder from Movable Ink. I think he has done a fantastic job at building a partner ecosystem with some very, I would say, in some cases, large and or difficult partners to work with. I believe the company has a very strong commitment to partners, and I always look at what they're doing. I always check them out on LinkedIn, look what they're doing. It's always, in my opinion, best of breed. So shout out to Kyle.
Awesome story on Fulham. I don't hold it against you that you're a Fulham fan. I tried to get you to become a Man United fan, but to be honest, over the last 12 years, it's not been much fun for me either. So thank you for your time today, Jim. It's been really, really insightful. Partnerships, as you know, is a strong GTM motion that I believe is one of the unsung heroes within most organizations. And what you've done today is just given a little bit of a taste of what excellent looks like. You've been doing this for a number of years, my friend. You've been winning awards left, right, and center. I've seen in previous awards that you've won on behalf of the companies that we've worked for. So to get you on one of the very first episodes that we've got of The Outside Seat, I really appreciate you taking the time today. So give everything a follow, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Outside Seat.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Your buyers are still sitting in that outside seat. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple or Spotify, drop a like and a follow. It genuinely means the world as we keep growing this channel. And if today's conversation sparked a question or a thought, leave it in the comments. Every month I answer your questions in a dedicated episode, and the best ones might just end up on Instagram, LinkedIn or TikTok. Your question could be the next conversation that we have. This episode was brought to you by Flourish. Find them at helloflourish.com. We will see you next time with a brand new guest in The Outside Seat.